You are listening to the Business Talk podcast. I am Deepak and I am here to guide you through today's conversation. I am delighted to welcome Dr. David Kiron, Editorial Director of Research at MIT Sloan Management Review, as our distinguished guest on today's podcast episode. In this episode, Dr. David shares valuable insights from his research. AI can change how you measure and how you manage. Previously, Dr. David held the position of Senior Researcher at Harvard Business School and served as a Research Associate at the Global Development and Environment Institute at the Tufts University. He holds a PhD in Philosophy from the University of Rochester and a BA from Oberlin College. Dr. David Kiron is the author or co-author of over 100 articles, reports, book chapters, and case studies on a wide range of business-related topics. He has co-edited two books, The Consumer Society and Human Well-being and Economic Goals, and is the co-author of the widely acclaimed book, Workforce Ecosystems, Reaching Strategic Goals with People, Partners, and the Technology, published by MIT Press. So without further delay, let's welcome Dr. David Kiron to the podcast. Dr. David, thank you for accepting our request and graciously joining us today.
Thank you, Deepak. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you again for inviting me on your show.
Thank you. Dr. David, you have argued that AI is reshaping how organizations define and track performance. Can you start by explaining how AI is changing the nature of key performance indicators?
Sure. Well, I think it's useful to take a step back and to think about where we are in the progress and the trajectory of how measurement has been used in management practices. We're witnessing the most fundamental shift in business measurement since Frederick Taylor introduced scientific management in the early 1900s. His stopwatch and clipboard approach, which was both despised and found useful by many people, gave us the DNA for modern KPIs, which was to measure discrete activities, optimize individual performance, and use what gets measured to manage workers. Now, that worked brilliantly for industrial workflows where humans operated machines in a predictable sequence. But throughout the 20th century, we've refined this approach as circumstances have evolved. And we've added balanced scorecard in the 90s through the work of Bob Kaplan and David Norton, and OKRs in the 2000s. But the core logic has remained the same. Break down complex work into measurable components, track individual contributions, and aggregate upward. It's kind of like a waterfall approach with a feedback loop. Now, AI's influence on this historical trajectory is dramatic and profound and thorough. And what I'd like to do, if you're okay with it, is to start talking about an interview I had with Bob Kaplan, who I worked with back when I was at HBS. And I promise I will try to limit how many names I drop. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
That's fine.
But we were talking to him, my colleague and I, Michael Schrag, who you've also had on the show, and we were talking about the influence of AI and his way of thinking about the balanced scorecard and measurement and metrics. And he said, well, it's not really going to have that much of a change in terms of how I think about these things because, and then what he said was, I focus on what you measure, and what you measure is determined largely by executive fiat. He didn't say executive fiat, but that's the idea. And then KPIs cascade down from the top. And he said, when you use AI to measure your progress on these KPIs, that's just a tool. And so it's subservient to what gets measured. And that was a kind of a dramatic moment for me in how I was thinking about KPIs, because it's isn't there more to it? Isn't AI more capable than just serving executive determined KPIs? And through our research, we found that indeed, there are several dramatic shifts that are underway. One is, um, I mean, as capitalism is like one of the great things about KPIs is that they communicate strategy very effectively. Um, it's like you give people a sense of what the mission and objective of the organization is by these KPIs. You make them visible, you clarify, boom, it's all set. So KPIs represent strategy. But what we found is that KPIs can do much more than that. They not only communicate, you can communicate with KPIs now. They're like software agents. Instead of having a KPI that flashes red, yellow, or green when things are going uh, poorly, okay, and really well, you can actually talk and engage with instrumented KPIs that are AI enhanced that enable you to communicate with them. So it's not just communicating um, a strategy to people. You can communicate kind of with strategy with your people, and that's a big break. And there are three other ones. There's accountability. I mean, obviously one of the big roles of KPIs is enables managers to hold themselves and workers accountable for their actions and behaviors and performance. Well, now when you have strategic measurement systems that can vary tremendously in quality, and you don't want to rely on legacy KPIs that aren't up to snuff when it comes to modern modern complexities of your business environment, you need to think differently about um, what accountability means. You need to be accountable for these systems of accountability, and that meta level of accountability is a dramatic shift from when work was being done on KPIs in the 90s. One, it's now possible to do that. Um, so that's another way. Learning is another function of KPIs, especially in the Kaplan-Norton framework, and that's so cool. However, now there's so many ways that AI itself can learn, and the KPIs that are built off of the AI can learn. And so each KPI can now be a type of learning loop back into strategy. So the multiplicity of learning loops has expanded tremendously within this AI era that we're in. So that's that's a a quick start, and I'm happy to answer a follow-up question. But the cool thing that I've seen is that I derive from that is one, KPIs aren't just outputs anymore. They're also inputs into machine learning models that can help develop new KPIs, refine KPIs, or elucidate or make transparent and visible relationships between other KPIs. So that's one. And the one that I was alluding to before is that uh, in the traditional format, you have KPIs that are determined by executives. And then there's this cascade of KPI, cascade down. Like, what does the C-suite think of what the right KPIs are? What then do their subordinates think? And then so forth and so on. Then, but what we found time and time again is that in surfacing new KPIs or adjustments to existing KPIs through the use of AI, what many companies are finding is that they need to change what it is that they're measuring. So it's not just you determine what is measured and then you figure out how to measure it. Now we're seeing a situation where that happens, but also how you measure can determine what gets measured, and that is a big flip. So that's two other ones. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, yeah. Your research publication highlights the concept of next-gen KPIs. How do these differ from traditional metrics, and what makes them more effective in today's business environment?
Yeah. So one is there's a lot of that connects with what I was just talking about, but also the data sources that are available today and the AI's ability to make sense of patterns at scale make it possible for new patterns to be uncovered that never happened before. We had sort of a wonderful exchange with some people from Wayfair, who uh, they they had this lost sales KPI, which is a big deal in online marketplaces like what they have, and it was specifically in the category of sofas. And what they were finding is that through the use of AI, they discovered that sometimes when some people did, like had a sofa in a cart and they didn't buy it, they wound up buying a sofa someplace else on their site. And so how they how they organized themselves around that basic insight was like radical. It reorganized everything from how they thought about inventory control to warehouse placement uh, to offers to customers. Their whole notion of customer engagement shifted as well. Um, so that's a few of the many changes. And also there's a review of KPIs that happens at a certain point. Some people look at it weekly, but the amount, so the frequency that you can look at KPIs is much different. The depths of detail that you can get into with KPIs is much better with AI. And their turnover rate is also like you're not going to get stuck with legacy KPIs. What if you've got a strategic measurement system that is continually renewing its KPIs?
Dr. David, could you share an example of how a company has used AI to identify or define a KPI that lead to significant strategic impact?
Sure, I can name a whole bunch, and that's one of the beauties of the research that we've been doing. So one of my favorite ones comes from IBM, and they had a bunch of uh, attrition that was happening in their organization. And for a big tech company, that is exactly like a strategic issue. The human talent component is a big strategic challenge for them, and they get poached. And it's so one of the things that they worked on, the CHRO worked on for over close to a decade, was an algorithm that could more effectively predict than human intuition alone or human experience with people, like who was going to leave. And not only that, but what managers could do to support uh, what managers could do to support these people's career aspirations within IBM. And when they rolled this out, people were so skeptical. Like, what are you talking about? Your algorithm can tell me more precisely whether my this person that I've been supervising for years is going to leave. And at one point, that is exactly what happened. And the CHROs like reported to us that like it's like, how did you know? How did you know? Um, so it was a big uh, and part of the reason why that attrition and retention issue was so valuable to them in a strategic way was because they were able to encourage people, valuable workers in ways they hadn't before, to pursue career paths that advanced what they saw as strategically important areas of their business into going forward. So that's one. Um, Happy to go over more of them if you like.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
please. Please.
oh, sure. So another one, and this has less to do with uh, coming up with a new KPI, uh, and that has to do with prioritizing KPIs. Because one of the big leadership challenges organizations are facing now is they have like so many um, performance indicators they can choose from. Like, how can they be both parsimonious, but also prioritize, even within that parsimonious group, like the right KPIs. And this a case in point where this came to a head was this company, Maersk, the big shipping company. And they were looking at, they faced a choice at one of the ports. Should they should they load and unload the ships and the trucks as fast as they can, which is what like the people at the managers at the port thought they should do, or should they just keep to a schedule that they had and not go as fast as they can? And the chief technology officer who's connected with this problem created a digital twin of the entire value chain, not only from that port, but also like downstream into like ground transports in other ports. And what they found was that keeping to a schedule would avoid bottlenecks going forward. And this was counterintuitive to the people who were to the port operators. And it wasn't like they showed their work and everybody agreed to it. It took a lot of work to convince and let people get to a point where people could trust that solution, because it just didn't make sense. And this actually ties into a larger problem that we've encountered time and time again, where KPIs are often siloed in a department, whether it's in the finance department, whether it's marketing, sales, etc. And there's this tension sometimes that happens when you have KPI islands, where you can maximize the KPI performance in some of these islands, but then they wind up becoming suboptimal at the global level, at the global corporate level. And what we found, again, that if you're able to use AI to show relationships between performance and make that visible to executives, they can have completely different sets, different kinds of conversations than they've had before. And that creates alignment. So some of the many ways that these are both strategically valuable and also from the standpoint of strategic alignment.
Yeah. AI systems often uncover patterns humans may not even think to look for. How can leaders ensure they trust and interpret these new AI-derived metrics correctly?
Sorry. So that's a great question. And so trust is a big deal, and I'll answer this in a couple of different ways. Again, feel free to stop me whenever. But one way is AI doesn't always do things by itself. You can actually ask it to recommend ideas and KPIs, and then you evaluate it. And it's like there are few organizations today that will just say, tell me some KPIs, and then immediately they get implemented. Usually it's a collaborative process. There's a test and learn component to it. And it's through that testing and learning that trust is built. If you don't have the data that can support, if people don't trust the data, then you're not going to wind up with like trustworthy KPIs. So, I mean, that's not novel. Having data governance systems that ensure that the KPIs are isn't. But what is somewhat new, and we're seeing this as a nascent trend, is that some organizations, and one in particular is Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric created a performance management office to ensure that KPIs are not just they're not running their business on legacy KPIs, but they're using AI to develop new. They've created an organizational structure to help with it. So from an organizational design perspective, there are things you can do. There's a collaborative, iterative approach with test and learn that you can do. Getting the fundamentals with the data is critical. And I would say one other thing is this combination of human oversight with explainability and making sure that you don't go too far on just relying on humans to do the supervising of these new KPIs, but you need to have some explainability built into what these KPIs are representing.
Dr.
But you
David,
can also,
yeah,
sorry, but there's one
please,
other thing.
please.
You can also interrogate the KPIs. Now with generative AI and agentic AI, you can actually interrogate the KPI and ask it what questions you have about its effectiveness, its truthiness, its et cetera.
Dr. David, you mentioned that AI can help align teams more effectively. In what ways does AI contribute to better organizational alignment and decision making?
Sure. So this is a particularly I'm particularly keen on this topic. So one of the companies that we encountered. So I'm not going to be too structured with this because I think just some examples will help illustrate how
Sure,
valuable
sure, yes.
AI can be. Is one we spoke with the company Sanofi, the pharmaceutical company, and they developed with a partner a platform called Play, Plai. And it basically became a playground, and they exposed and they made this tool accessible to like 10,000 of their top executives. And what the platform did was show where relationships between, like if they were predicting a stock out in like an out of stock pharmaceutical component in one part of the world, people could use the tool to see what kind of impact that would have on their sales forecasts. So supply chain, manufacturing, finance, they could all be talking to one another using this tool that revealed interdependencies and made visible relationships that they might not otherwise know about if they are focused entirely on the KPIs that they have in their individual silos. Eventually, the information would come through, but it would be too late. So it increases agility and the ability to adapt to shifting circumstances. That's one. Another one is Pernod Ricard. This is the large beverage group based in France, and they have a tool that enables executives, and this was developed by or co-developed by one of their chief technologists, to look at margins or it was profitability versus market share. And they could use a cursor to show sort of what would be the strategic implications of investing more in one area and more in another area. And this tool, and they had KPIs for profitability and they had KPIs for market share. And the people who were responsible for these things, they wound up talking to each other more effectively. And again, this is about local maxima, global optima, and they were able to get closer to working out what the global optima should be. So those are two examples.
Yeah. What are some of the risks and unintended consequences of relying too heavily on AI-generated KPIs? And how should companies mitigate this?
Yeah. So uh, if you're leaving, if you're creating an automated process for AI to come up with your KPIs, then there's a lot of risk in that. And even if the AI comes up with the best possible KPI you can imagine, um, or even if you couldn't imagine it, uh, that's you don't want to give over too much of your power in the organization the uh, to the algorithm. And one of the things that we found in some future research that Michael and I have done on intelligent choice architectures is that there's like what choices you have can really determine what um, what your decisions are. And if you work with AI to develop and cultivate what these KPIs are, then you're not it's not some exogenous force that is like dictating to you what you should do. Um, you should have accountability for the systems of accountability that you have. And so governance and decision rights, allocating decision rights is an absolutely critical thing that managers need to get ahead of when it comes to having AI making decisions, recommendations, especially around what, like not just performance indicators, but key performance indicators.
Dr. David, data quality and availability are critical for AI systems. What foundational steps must organizations take to ensure they're ready to implement AI-driven measurement?
Yeah, well, the first thing is uh, and it really depends what executives we're talking about. And part of this is whether the C-suite is really ready for um, doing AI at this level of sophistication, creating because the percentage of organizations that are actually using AI to improve their KPIs is not high, or it wasn't high a couple of years ago when we did the survey on this. And you need to have uh, data that is functional. And we've talked to several companies that they've taken like a couple of years to get their data in order, whether they're like 150-year-old companies or 20-year-old companies, or even lower. There's time must be invested, and not just money, but time, and to see the value of these efforts. Because in in our view, and what we're hearing from the organizations that we're researching, renewing KPIs are a direct route to improving their competitiveness in the business landscape. If it takes a couple of years to shore up your data to to play with these other organizations in the competitive space, then um, you either make that commitment or you don't, or and uh, so there has to be executive will, if you will, to get started on that. Um, I don't have anything on the specifics of data quality, get it clean, get your data governance system. These are all kind of pat, like baseline kinds of things you need to do. What you need is the executive will to say, this is happening. We're going to become much more data driven. If you want to be AI centric, you need to do this.
Dr. David, as AI tools become more accessible, do you foresee a shift in how middle managers and frontline teams interact with performance data?
Well, if there are middle managers left, then I would say absolutely, because I mean, so many, what's available now and what's going to become more pervasive, I believe, is coaching tool. And these coaching tools are going to be throwing off all kinds of data that managers can use to support the automated coaching apps, which enable self-directed learning. So automation is not just something that's going to take away jobs or even make organizations or individual workers more creative. It's going to enable individual workers to become like more effective and more self-directed in their career path within their organization. So middle managers can leverage that. Of course, middle managers can then be evaluated based on whether or not they're using that kind of data properly. So there's almost like a cascading up of metrics that can be had from these new AI-based tools. I mean, I'll tell you one example that we had came from Liberty Mutual, which had been measuring the performance of their claims adjusters by their speed and effectiveness of their how quickly and effectively they adjudicate claims that come their way. Well, when they introduced AI into the workflow, what they found is that the highest performers weren't just the ones who were effective. They were, on like the claim itself. They were more effective with working with AI to adapt to like novel claims, to anticipate and be empathetic with customers. And they wound up creating an entirely new metric that consisted of, well, they named it, it was, I think, collaborative intelligence effectiveness. When that changed their hiring practices, I mean, it really changed so they weren't looking for the speediest people, they were looking for the people who were most effective in their collaborations with others and with technology. These are big changes. It's not just like change a KPI and nothing else happens. We're talking about a momentous shift in organizational design, leadership, how people think about strategic execution, and also like how people think about developing strategy itself.
Yeah. Dr. David, my last question. For leaders looking to get started on this journey, what are some practical first steps they can take to begin integrating AI into their performance management processes?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say like throw out your hated performance management systems as they currently exist, but this is an opportunity now for organizations to really, and for leaders to really rethink the purpose of performance management. Is it about control? Is it about uh, figuring out how much the bonuses are going to be? Is it about um, like how they're going to advance their strategic objectives? And what we're finding is that if organizations are rethinking performance management in all kinds of ways, and this is what I've been talking about today is yet another way that organizations should rethink the purpose and ontology of performance management. Like, what are the things you actually want to be measuring? Like, what is the purpose of measuring performance of individual workers? Are individuals the proper unit of analysis for performance management? Maybe it's teams. Maybe it's teams with AI, as it was the case with Liberty Mutual. It's once a year performance reviews based on data that's like haphazardly collected over the year is I mean, it's still very, very common, but you know, it's facing increasing pressure from agentic AI, generative AI, to change for leaders to change those ways.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. David Kiron, for joining us on today's episode and sharing such compelling insights on how AI is transforming the way organizations measure and manage performance. Your perspective on next generation KPIs, organizational alignment, and the evolving role of data-driven leadership offers valuable direction for business leaders navigating the AI era. It's been a true privilege to learn from your deep research and experience. For our listeners, we hope this conversation sparked new thinking on how AI can enhance your decision making and strategic management. Don't forget to check out Dr. Kiron's recent work, including the thought-provoking article AI Can Change How You Measure and How You Manage on MIT Sloan Management Review and his latest book, Workforce Ecosystem from MIT Press. Thank you once again, Dr. David, for being with us.
Thank you, Deepak. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.